Today we will discuss about Brihadaranyaka Upanishad. Brihadaranyaka means the wild forest. So in this Upanishad, it starts explaining about the Akshara, the changeless reality. It says to attain this Akshara is the goal of human life. This self, which is nearer to us than anything else, is indeed dearer than a son, dearer than wealth, dearer than all beside. Let a man worship the self alone as dear, for if he worship the self alone as dear, the object of his love will never perish. And it says, the virtue of him who meditates on the kingdom of self is never exhausted. For the self is the source from which all virtue springs. And then it explains about the relation between soul and supreme soul. It says, the intelligent, immortal being, the soul of this earth, the supreme soul, and the intelligent, immortal being, the soul, the individual soul, each is honey to the other. Now it explains about the soul, the self. You cannot see the seer of the sight. You cannot hear the hearer of the sound. You cannot think the thinker of the thought. You can't know the knower of the known. Again I reply, this yourself, which is within all, anything that is not the self perishes. Then it says, the sage, the wise, how does such a knower of Brahman act and conduct himself? Whatever he may do or howsoever he may conduct himself, he is free from craving and is forever established in the knowledge of the self. Anything that is not the self perishes. Then it continues, unseen but the seer, unheard but the hearer, unthinkable but the thinker, unknown but the knower. There is no other seer but he, there is no other hearer but he, there is no other thinker but he, there is no other knower but he. He, the self, is the inner ruler, the immortal. Anything that is not the self perishes. Now the sage Yagnavakya explains about three states of self consciousness. One is the self is get lost in the dreams, either it is waking dream or the sleeping dream, and the second is self get lost in sleep, and the third state of awareness is the self get connected with the supreme soul. So here he explains that Inda is the self identified with the physical self. Viraj, the physical world, is his wife, the object of his enjoyment. The space within the heart is their place of union in dream. When the self is identified with the subtle body or mind, the self in dreamless sleep is identified with the vital force. Beyond this is the supreme soul, he that has been described as not this, not that. He is incomprehensible, for he cannot be comprehended. The God is undecaying, for he never decays. God is unattached, for he does not attach himself. God is unfettered, for nothing can fetter him. God is never hurt. And he says to Janaka, you have attained the God, who is free from fear. O Janaka, and you attain freedom from birth and death. And now Yagnavakya explains about the life after death. All the organs, detaching themselves from the physical body, unite with the subtle body. The deeds of this life and the impressions they leave behind follow the soul that leaves the body. As his deed is, so is his reward, whether good or bad. And He in whom desire is stilled suffers no rebirth. After death, having attained to the highest, desiring only the self, he goes to no other world. Realizing the self and the God, he becomes self-aware, the Brahman. When all the desires which once entered into his heart have been driven out by divine knowledge, the mortal attaining to Brahman, the self and the Supreme Self, becomes immortal. And in conclusion, it says, let a man therefore seek to find God, since having found him, he can never be touched by evil. Self-controlled is he who knows the Self and the Supreme Self. Tranquil, poised, free from desires, absorbed in meditating upon Self and God, he sees it within his own soul. Evil touches him not, troubles him not, for in the fire of his divine knowledge, all evil is burnt away. Freed from evil, freed from desire, freed from doubt, he becomes a knower of Brahman, the Self and the Supreme Self. And this Upanishad ends with 3 words, that is, be self-controlled, be charitable, and be compassionate. Thank you.